Welcome back to the Great Man Podcast. My name is Maxim, and today I'm going to be talking about a great man named Jacklyn H. Lucas. And that might sound like a girl's name, but I promise you, this is not a man you would want to mess with. So Jack was born on February 14th, or Valentine's Day, in 1928 in a small North Carolina town. And there wasn't too much going on in Jack's life at the time until December 7th, 1941, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. Now, this changed everything for him. This got him super angry, and he was actually going to do something about it. So what did he do? Well, he went to Virginia, and he paid a public notary to falsely say that he was 17 years old, even though he was 13. Then he forged his mother's signature and shipped off to basic training for the U.S. Marines when he was 13 years old. He was shipped out to Parris Island for U.S. Marine boot camp, and by the time he was done with boot camp, he was 14 years old. And you might be wondering, how could a 13-year-old or 14-year-old get past all of this? Yes, he forged his mom's signature and also paid a public notary to say he was 17, but he was also very large for his age. He was 5'8" and 200 pounds, and he looked a lot older than he was. On Parris Island, he worked a fairly crappy job that he didn't want to work because he wanted to go fight the Japanese. So, he also did something about this. He decided he was going to abandon his post and go to Pearl Harbor. And when he got there, he grabbed the first person he could and told them that there was an error and that he was supposed to be shipped off to Iwo Jima. They then made him a truck driver at Pearl Harbor. All of his requests to go to the front lines were denied. All of them. Which made him very upset. While he was at Honolulu, he got in a drunken bar fight and also went AWOL so he could head into town and meet girls. I mean, of course he did. He was busted by a military policeman for walking through the barracks with a case of beer, and he responded by punching him in the face. After a couple years, Jack was very, very annoyed that he wasn't fighting the Japanese, that he wasn't in the front lines. So he decided, screw it, I'm going to leave, and I'm going to get on a boat, headed straight for Iwo Jima. He snuck aboard the boat and was found, but then convinced him to let them stay. And they also found out that he was not 17 years old, that he was probably about 14 or 15 by this point. Of the about 40,000 Marines that hit the beaches of Iwo Jima on February 20th, 1945, Jack was one of the men that did not have a weapon. But that changed quickly when he quickly grabbed a gun from a dead man that was lying on the beach. And by the time Jack fired the second round, the gun jammed because it was in the sand. It was in blood, sand, and it was probably about a couple inches in the water. So Jack and his men were in a ravine fighting the Japanese that were not very far away from them. And while they were in the ravine, they realized that 11 Japanese soldiers who were in a pillbox in front of them crawled underneath one of the many tunnels that the Japanese made, appeared behind him, and that's when Jack turned around and fired the first shot at a Japanese soldier's head and killed him on the spot. And when that small group of Marines were huddled down in this ravine, Jack saw that a live hand grenade flew into that ravine, and so he quickly grabbed it and held it underneath him. Then he saw another one, grabbed that one, and held them both underneath him. He blew up, that sent him flying back, and all the guys around him thought he was dead. I mean, why wouldn't you think that? The guy just got blown up by 2 grenades. So they left him there, but he was just unconscious. Japanese soldiers even ended up going straight past him, thinking that he too was dead. The Marines that saw Lucas get blown up were terrified by it, but it also gave them more aggression, and they started to fight harder. And when they went over to collect the dog tags, they realized that he was still alive. So they called over a Navy corpsman, and he quickly made sure to get Jack out of there. They put him on a stretcher, and as they're carrying him out of there, they're fighting off the charging Japanese with their pistols, all shooting at them while they're carrying this man. When they got Jack back to his ship, he had 250 pieces of shrapnel in him, and that took 21 surgeries. And then 6 days after his 17th birthday, he received the Medal of Honor by Harry S. Truman. So long after the war, when Jack was about 40 years old, he decided to start a business, but I don't think that really worked out too well for him. So then he joined the Army paratroopers. And would you guess, on the first day of training, he jumps out of the plane, and not one, but both of the parachutes fail, and he falls to the ground. And he survives. And he would credit his stocky body and last-second roll for his survival. In fact, he walked away unscathed. He was just fine. And apparently, his house burned down later, and his wife would try to murder him. So this guy had a very interesting life, but I think the most interesting part of it was definitely when he was a teenager, because that shows that it doesn't really matter what age you are, it matters what you do. And some people would argue, well, it was a bad thing for him to bribe a public notary to say he was 17, to forge his mother's signature, and to illegally go into the U.S. Marines at such a young age. But he made that decision, and not only did he save the lives of men by putting not one but 2 grenades underneath him, but he also killed at least 1 Japanese soldier while doing it. And that's the thing. It doesn't matter what age you are. Doesn't matter how young or old you are. You can always do what's right. Another interesting thing that will just further prove that no matter how young you are, you can do great things, is this from John Taylor Gatto, which I'll put up on screen. Thomas Jefferson was running by himself, both parents dead, a 2,500-acre farm with 250 employees at the age of 13. George Washington didn't go to school till he was 11, and the first subject he studied was trigonometry. He then became a crackerjack surveyor by the time he was 13, and by the time he was 17, he was the official surveyor of Culpeper County, Virginia. Admiral Dewey, who was the first American admiral, sailed a warship from Peru to Boston in 1815. It was a captured British warship. He was the only one available. He was 12 years old. He was the captain. He had 2 guns on, and when the British captain appeared above deck, he told him, "Sir," he said, "you will be dead if you do that again," and thrown over the side. He was 12. Thomas Edison had a newspaper business making big bucks when he was 12 years old. He was reporting Civil War news to passengers on a long-distance trains between the peninsula of Michigan and the Upper Peninsula. He had access to a telegraph. He had the war news first. He sold it for a dime to a quarter. Sometimes he would sell 1,000 copies at a stop. This just further proves these... You could be 12, you could be 13, you could be 14, you could be 15, 16, 17, and do great things. Things that people can't even imagine. But it's important that young men know, that you guys know, that you can be great men even at a young age. You don't have to wait until you're older. You should start now. And some of you guys are starting to be great men now. You're trying to improve yourselves, to do awesome things. And that's good. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video on Jack Lucas, this amazing man who, is probably one of the best men we've covered on this channel so far. At least in terms of a crazy story. But all these men on this channel are great men, and we must remember them. But thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.